Rain slashed sideways across the dim parking lot. A single dad, Ben Carter, hunched over a cart of groceries, one arm shielding his 6-year-old daughter asleep in a torn car seat. He was soaked, exhausted, and limping from an old factory injury. But he moved fast when he saw her. A woman, drenched, barefoot, clutching a trash bag, sat shaking beside a dumpster behind the store. Most people looked away, but not Ben. He didn't speak. He just took off his only coat, wrapped it around her, and offered a half-crushed sandwich from his bag. She met his eyes for half a second, and then looked away. Ashamed. Double quotes, just ... Stay warm, he said, walking back into the storm with his child. What Ben didn't know was the woman he just saved once ran billion-dollar company until one lie destroyed everything. And what she didn't know was that the man offering her food would soon be the only person left who believed her. But would his kindness survive what she was about to reveal? Rain stabbed the pavement like glass. The parking lot outside the 24-hour grocery store flickered under broken streetlights. Ben Carter, a 37-year-old single dad, shoved a broken cart toward his rusted-out van. One arm held a bag of off-brand cereal. The other steadied his sleeping daughter Grace, wrapped in a second-hand jacket 2 sizes too big. As Ben reached the van, he spotted a figure slumped beside a dumpster, drenched, trembling, barefoot. A woman, maybe late 30s, dirty, soaked. Her eyes darted as if even the shadows were after her. Ben paused. People walked past. He didn't. He opened his van, pulled out his own coat thin, but dry, and walked toward her. "Ma'am," he said softly. Kneeling. "You okay?" She flinched. He placed the coat over her shoulders. "You don't gotta talk. Just stay warm." Then, from his grocery bag, he pulled out a half-crushed sandwich. "For later," he said. She looked at him, then just a flicker. Something hollow and haunted behind her eyes. Ben turned to leave. He had no idea she once owned a corner office with glass walls, and no clue how she would soon change his life. Ben Carter had never lived an easy day. A forklift operator at the Crescent paper mill. He worked nights so he could be there when his daughter woke up. Every morning, he picked up Grace from the neighbor's cramped apartment, kissed her head, and brewed the cheapest coffee that still called itself coffee. His wife Ella had died 6 years ago, brain aneurysm. No warning. 1 minute she was laughing at a rerun of The Office, the next she was on the kitchen floor. Ben never really recovered, but Grace kept him going. They lived in a 1999 Dodge Caravan. Beige, 2 busted doors. He kept it clean. He called it home. Ben had a kindness most people forgot to keep. He wasn't loud about it. He just did what was right, even when nobody was watching. Most nights, he read Grace stories with a flashlight. Most mornings, he washed her socks in a gas station sink. He didn't complain. He didn't ask. He just showed up. And that night, when he gave a stranger his only coat, it wasn't a grand gesture. It was just Ben being Ben. Ben had grown up in a town that once had a steel spine. Now it had rusted ribs. His father was a welder turned drinker. His mother left when he was 9, never looked back. At 16, Ben worked the loading dock at Jansen's Feed Supply. He saved every dollar to buy his first car, and drove it to a job interview at the same paper mill that would define his life. He was never top of the class. Never the kid teachers thought would go far. But Ben had something better, grit. Quiet, stubborn grit. He remembered nights sleeping on floors, cereal with water. His dad screaming at football games he couldn't win. So when life got hard. Later, when his wife died and the bills outgrew the fridge, Ben didn't panic. He knew struggle. He just held tighter to Grace. And maybe that's why, when he saw someone in pain that rainy night, sitting where he used to sit as a kid, alone, wet, and invisible, his instinct wasn't fear. It was recognition. Ella collapsed in the kitchen holding a plate of pancakes. Grace had just turned 1. Ben remembered the syrup pooling under her cheek, the plate spinning like a coin. Ambulance, sirens, white coats, then a white sheet. He stared at the hospital hallway for hours. A doctor mumbled something about brain bleeds, and no way to predict. Ben barely heard it. What he did hear, loud and clear, was the insurance rep 2 days later telling him her coverage had lapsed. He just buried his wife. Now he owed $86,000. Within 6 months, the bank repossessed the house. Grace was too young to understand. She called the van the beep beep home. Ben kept smiling for her. He told her it was an adventure, but that night, in the back of the van while she slept curled against him, he broke. He cried the way only a man cries when no one's around. Chest shaking, silent, ashamed. And in that breaking, he made a vow, should never feel what I felt. No matter what. Grace was 6 now. Bright eyes. A squeaky laugh like her mother's. She loved drawing people with stick arms and giant smiles. "That's you, Daddy," she'd say, handing him a crayon sketch on the back of a grocery receipt. They lived in and out of the van. A kind waitress at a 24-hour diner let them park behind the building at night. "Just don't cause trouble," she'd say, slipping Grace extra hash browns when the manager wasn't looking. Ben bathed Grace with jugs of warm water, brushed her teeth in gas stations, read her Charlotte's Web by flashlight. Sometimes he'd look at her and wonder how something so pure came from a world so cruel. Once, he tried for government housing. The waiting list was 2 years. Another time, a local charity turned him away because he didn't have a physical address. He held it all in. But every so often, late at night, when he thought she was asleep, Grace would whisper, "Are we poor, Daddy?" And every time Ben would pull her close and say, "We're not poor. We're rich in the only thing that counts. Love." Exactly. The rain hadn't stopped since Tuesday. The van's roof leaked just above Grace's pillow, so Ben angled a plastic plate under it to catch the drips. He was counting coins at the front counter of the grocery store when he saw her again, the woman from the dumpster. This time, she stood near the vending machines, soaked from the knees down, pretending to read labels, eyes darting like a hunted animal. Ben's heart pulled tight. "Stay here, baby," he told Grace. Handing her a bag of popcorn, he walked over, holding a small steaming coffee he'd just bought for himself. "You look cold," he said, extending the cup. She froze, looked at him like he'd just offered her a brick of gold. She took it, whispered, "Thanks." Her voice was ragged, like it hadn't been used in days. "I'm Ben," he said gently. She hesitated, eyes scanning again before murmuring, "Mara." Then she turned and vanished into the rain. Ben stood there, cup still warm in his hands, wondering what kind of life made someone run from warmth. That night, the temperature dropped hard, cold enough that even the van's windows frosted at the edges. Ben tucked Grace in the back, layering her with blankets, then stepped outside to breathe. And there she was, Mara, huddled behind the dumpster again, shivering uncontrollably. He walked over slowly. "You'll freeze out here." She didn't move. "Look, it's not much, but the van's got heat. At least till the gas runs out." No reply. "I got a 6-year-old in there. So nothing weird, just a warm place to sleep." A pause, then a nod. Inside, Grace blinked up. "Who's she, Daddy?" "This is Miss Mara," Ben said softly, helping her in. "She's our guest tonight." Grace smiled sleepily. "Hi, Miss Mara." Mara sat quietly in the front seat, hands wrapped around the empty coffee cup. She didn't speak the rest of the night. But just before dawn, when Ben pretended to sleep, he heard her whisper to herself, "You shouldn't be this kind." And then she cried, quiet, broken sobs, like someone who'd held it in too long. The next morning, Mara was gone. Ben wasn't surprised. People like her didn't linger. They survived. But around noon, she returned, holding a fresh apple and a piece of gas station bread. "For the kid," she mumbled. Grace beamed. Thank you, Miss Mara. Ben raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He offered her a seat on a nearby bench, the kind with peeling paint and rusted. Bolts. She sat. Ben noticed her fingernails, clipped short, clean. Her posture, straight, almost trained. You weren't always out here, were you? He asked quietly. Mara didn't answer, but her hands trembled. Later that evening, as Grace colored in the back seat, Mara jolted awake from a nap. She gasped. Eyes wide, hands clawing at air. Ben touched her shoulder gently. You're okay. Just a dream. No, she rasped. Not a dream. A boardroom, papers, security. I didn't steal anything. Ben's brow furrowed. You worked. Corporate? She looked at him, pain sharp in her eyes. I ran it. Then she turned away, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. Ben didn't press, but the puzzle had started. Clicking. This wasn't just a woman who'd fallen. This was someone who'd been pushed. 3 days later, Mara finally told him. They sat on the curb behind the diner, watching Grace play with a bottle cap and 2 bottle tops she called princesses. I built a company, Mara said, voice low. Healthcare tech. Started it from scratch. Got into clinics, hospitals, even overseas contracts. 20 million in revenue before I turned 40. Ben whistled softly. My coup. Partner. We were close. I trusted him. One day, audit flags. IRS, FBI. Board investigation. Money missing. She paused. I was too late. He'd forged my signature on transfers. Framed me. My accounts were frozen. They let him resign quietly. She looked at Ben. They made me the story. Ben's fists clenched. So? They just let you fall. She nodded. No charges, no trial, but the press killed me. My name, my reputation. Everything gone. I couldn't get a job at a coffee shop without people whispering. He stared at her. Not with pity, but with something closer to rage. Why didn't you fight back? She looked down. Because no one believed me. Ben looked toward the van, where Grace was humming to herself. Content in a world she didn't yet know was broken. He whispered. I believe you. Mara's eyes filled. No one had said that in years. They were walking through town, Ben holding Grace's hand, Mara trailing behind when it happened. A woman across the street froze mid-step. Eyes narrowed. She crossed traffic without even checking, storming toward them with a purse swinging like a weapon. Oh my God, you've got nerve showing your face here. She spat, jabbing a finger at Mara. You stole retirement funds. My sister lost everything. Mara froze, visibly shrinking. Ben stepped between them. Back off, lady. You don't even know who she is. The woman yelled, glaring. I know who she isn't, Ben snapped. She's not what you read in a blog 5 years ago. The woman sneered and stormed off. But the damage was done. Mara stood shaking. Grace reached up, tugging her sleeve. Are you okay, Miss Mara? Mara forced a smile, blinked fast, and nodded. Later that night, she whispered to Ben, I should go. He shook his head. You didn't do anything wrong. I did, she whispered. Ben stared at her. Then take it. I let them bury me. His voice was quiet but steady. Then maybe it's time you dig yourself out. They found an old Chromebook at a thrift store for $40. It booted up slower than a sunrise. But it worked. Mara started typing. She dug up old legal documents, emails, spreadsheets. Night after night in the van, while Grace slept between them. Mara built her case. Ben read over her shoulder. He didn't understand every corporate term, but he understood lies. He saw them plain. You really were set up, he muttered one night. I know, she said. But knowing isn't enough, Ben nodded. So make them know, too. She blinked at him. You still think the world cares? I think it should. And in that parking lot, between gas station lights and the low hum of traffic, Mara Started rewriting her story, not as a victim, but as a fighter. One night, Mara pulled up an old email chain on the laptop. It was nothing big, just back and forth threads between her and her coup from 3 years ago. But buried in the thread was gold, timestamps proving she hadn't approved key transactions. Ben leaned in. That's it. That's your proof, right? Mara stared. Her hands shook. It's not enough for court, but it's enough for public eyes. Ben grinned. Then give it to him. She hesitated. I'm scared, Ben. Once I go public, there's no hiding. Not in alleys, not behind dumpsters, not anywhere. He looked at her steady. You already walked through the fire. Might as well light a torch. She smiled, not big, not proud, but like a woman remembering her reflection for the first time in years. She clicked. Send. The story began. They needed to file an affidavit, a real one, with legal support. The cost? $600 in notary and filing fees. Ben stared at his glove compartment for a long time. Inside was Ella's locket. She wore it every day of their marriage. Inside, a photo of the three of them. Grace still a baby. He held it in his palm for a moment, letting the chain run between his fingers. Then he walked into the pawn shop and laid it on the counter. Best I can do is $220. The man said. Ben didn't flinch. Done. He used that, plus half a paycheck to cover the fees. He didn't tell Mara what he gave up, but she noticed his eyes linger on Grace's drawing, the one with stick figure mommy wearing a heart necklace. That night, she found him sitting outside the van. You gave up something important. He didn't look up. Doesn't matter. It does to me. She sat beside him, quiet, then placed her hand gently on his. I won't waste what you gave me. And in that moment, she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for them. It happened on a Tuesday. Ben got pulled into the manager's office at the paper mill. You've missed 3 shifts this month, Carter. I had an emergency, my daughter, and I don't care. We need dependable workers. You're out. Just like that. 15 years, and they tossed him like scrap. That night, he didn't talk, didn't eat. Just sat in the van, staring ahead while Grace colored beside him and Mara read the news on her laptop. Eventually, Mara looked up. What happened? He didn't answer, but later when Grace was asleep, he stepped out of the van and just stood in the rain, hands clenched, jaw tight. Mara followed. You lost your job, she said. He nodded. Because of me. He turned sharply. No, because they don't care about loyalty, or truth, or people. He swallowed hard. I don't have anything left to give. Mara looked at him. Then let me carry it for a while. He looked at her, as if for the first time. Maybe he'd saved her from the rain that first night. But now she was the one sheltering him. Mara stood outside the Marriott Grand Ballroom, dressed in a borrowed blazer and jeans. Inside, the Healthcare Futures Summit was buzzing. Industry leaders, press, and the same board members who once erased her, then stood beside her, holding Grace's hand. You sure? Mara's jaw clenched. No, but I'm done hiding. They entered. As the keynote began, Mara slipped to the side stage where a tech-savvy college intern waited. She uploaded her files to the live event screen. Emails, time-stamped, bank transfers, phone recordings. The full story. Then she stepped onto the stage, uninvited. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Some of you know me, she said, voice shaking but rising. Some of you ruined me. Security started forward, but the crowd froze them. I was framed. And now, here's the truth. Behind her, proof scrolled on the massive screen. Board members shifted in panic. Her coup was in the front row. He bolted for the exit, but it was too late. Phones recorded, reporters streamed. Truth had come to collect. 2 weeks later, her former partner was arrested for wire fraud and conspiracy. Her name was cleared in court filings, still. Mara declined interviews. I'm not looking for applause, she told a journalist. Just a name I can say without shame. She received a settlement, millions, though she refused to disclose the exact amount. What mattered more? She used the money to quietly fund women's shelters, bought laptops for girls aging out of foster care, sponsored coding boot camps in forgotten towns, but none of the donations had her name. Just a single line, stamped on each receipt, from someone who got a second chance. Ben asked her once, "You ever think of starting over?" She smiled. "I already did." A small local paper ran the story. Former CEO clears name in stunning comeback. But buried near the bottom, in a short paragraph, was one line. A single father, Ben Carter, believed her when no one else did. That was it. No interviews. No spotlight. When a reporter tracked him down for a quote, Ben just shook his head. "I didn't save anybody. I gave her a coat." Grace tugged his sleeve. "You gave her your heart too, Daddy." He smiled and ruffled her hair. Mara, watching from the porch of her newly bought cottage, wiped her eyes quietly. Ben never needed recognition. His kindness was never for display. But maybe that's why it mattered more. A year later, Ben ran a tiny bakery on the edge of town. A warm, sleepy place with brick walls and the smell of cinnamon. He never asked how Mara bought it, just found the keys on his dashboard one morning, with a sticky note, "For the man who never asked why." He tried to give it back. She refused. Now, every Sunday, Grace helped fold napkins while Ben kneaded dough. Locals came in not for the pastries, but for the peace. Out front, under a maple tree, sat a wooden bench. Hand-carved, polished, humble. On its back was a small brass plaque, "For the man who gave warmth when the world gave cold." Sometimes, Ben would sit there with coffee, watching Grace chase butterflies, the sun catching the red in her curls. Sometimes Mara would join them, hands wrapped around a paper cup, hair tied back, eyes no longer hunted, but human again. They didn't talk about the past much. They didn't need to, because they had found something better, a new beginning. Quietly built on kindness. He never wanted thanks. Never asked for praise. Just gave what he had, even when he had almost nothing. And maybe that's what made all the difference. In a world loud with judgment and silence, he chose kindness, quietly, repeatedly, stubbornly. Not because it fixed everything, but because it mattered. Maybe the greatest heroes don't wear badges or build empires. Maybe they just hand you their coat when the world feels cold. And somehow, without ever meaning to, change your life forever.